Good afternoon, everyone. I am Arvise Washington, the Deputy Director for the Department of Navy's Office of Small Business Programs, led by our distinguished director, Mr. Jimmy Smith. On behalf of OSBP, we thank you for joining us today. We started this webinar series as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic as a way to continue outreach, but received such rave reviews, we decided to keep it going, committing to hosting at least 3 webinars a month. The Department of the Navy recognizes small businesses are the catalyst of innovation, and we use this platform as a way to attract new business partners. You can view previously recorded events on our website under the Outreach and Past Events tab, or visit our YouTube channel. I would like to direct you to our website at www.secnav.navy.mil/small-business, where you can find a wealth of information, including our DON OSBP operations plan. You can locate your small business professional and find information on how to do business with the DON, including the Command's long-range acquisition forecast. To stay current on DON OSB upcoming events, you can register for our mailing list on the homepage of our website. To stay up to date about upcoming industry days, command outreach, and in general, what's happening across the DON, I also encourage you to connect with us on our social media platforms, including Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Kicking off this week with a happy Women's Day, on Monday, we have a dynamic panel from the USAID featuring Ms. Jamila Payton as the Deputy Director of Operations for the United States Agency for International Development, Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. Ms. Payton has over 23 years of federal service in acquisitions. She joined the OSDBU office after serving 11 years as a senior contracting official for USAID's Office of Acquisition and Assistance, Washington and Foreign Service Operations. I hope you seize the opportunity to ask questions using the Q&A feature on this platform. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Ms. Payton. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Ms. Washington, and welcome everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for your interest in USAID, and thank you so much for the DON for putting on this event. And happy Women's Day, everyone. I know it was on Monday, but let's celebrate the week. USAID is the US government's leading development agency. We have programs and operations in 100 countries around the world under the authorities of the Foreign Assistance Act. What we provide is development assistance to partner countries, which we call our beneficiaries, in areas of health, humanitarian assistance, global stability, which includes helping to build strong, inclusive economies, governance, which promotes democracy and rule of law, and peace, and that's just to name a few. We take great interest in innovation because we fully recognize that in order to provide lasting results to some of the world's very complex and oftentimes long-standing development problems, you need cutting-edge solutions to bring about sustainable results. Lastly, as an agency, we firmly believe in the fact that when women do better, countries and communities do better. So we always program our development activities through the lens of empowering women and girls. Inclusion is a really, really big deal for USAID. In our office, as Ms. Washington mentioned, I am the Deputy Director of Operations for USAID OSDBU, and we operate as an independent office that reports directly to the head of the agency. Our mandate is simple. We advocate and assist U.S. small businesses just like you in entering the USAID contract arena, and we aim to meet our annual goals as negotiated every year with the Small Business Administration. Now, while our mandate may be simple, our programs are quite varied and oftentimes complex. What you'll hear today from our presenters is more about those programs, our areas of focus, and definitely you're going to walk away with some keys on how to enter the USAID contracting workspace. One thing I want you to remember as you're listening to the presenters is that ours is a different kind of work due to the overseas component. I started out with the Foreign Assistance Act. That is indeed our authority as an agency. There are rich opportunities for U.S. small businesses in our missions overseas, as well as here in Washington. I encourage you to take really good notes today as you learn how to engage with our agency. We are unique and our work is very important, and in many ways, it is life-saving. I applaud each of you for being here today and for taking an interest in USAID. Please know that USAID OSDBU, along with my colleagues in OAA, which is our Office of Acquisition and Assistance, that we're all here to help, and we really look forward to hearing from each of you. I'll stop there in the interest of time. And now I'd like to turn it over to our Senior Communications, Congressional, and Public Engagement Program Specialist. Her title is long, and trust me, in no way does it convey all that she does for the organization. But that's Ms. Teneshia Alston, and she'll continue the conversation on OSDBU and our programs. Over to you, Teneshia. Thanks.
Thank you, Jamila. Thank you. As she mentioned, I am the agency's, in addition to the communications coordinator, I am also the agency's small business program goaling manager. Now, before I begin, I wish to send a special thank you to the Americans stationed throughout the world who serve to protect our way of life. I also wish to thank the Department of Navy's Small Business Program Director, Jimmy Smith, and the Deputy Director, Arvis Washington, and most important, the Public Affairs Officer, Destiny White, who provided us this opportunity to share information about USAID today. So I can't see my slides, so I'll just say next slide. Next slide. Okay, here we go. Thank you so much, Destiny. She's awesome. You've already heard a brief overview about USAID during my Deputy Director's opening remarks, and she pretty much provided an overview of what the rest of my colleagues will discuss today. So next slide, please. So let's move on to slide 3. Okay, here we go. USAID was created in 1961 during the administration of John F. Kennedy. The agency carries out U.S. foreign policy by improving the lives and well-being of people living in poverty, and at the same time expanding democracy and promoting free markets. Although our work is separate from political and military assistance, our programs address both security and development objectives. We work hard to build a world that is safer, healthier, and more prosperous for people everywhere. Next slide, please. The United States is the world's largest bilateral donor for foreign assistance, as Jamila alluded to. Next slide, please, slide 4. As she alluded to earlier, we are extending help from the American people to millions of women, children, and men who live in deep poverty and are among the most vulnerable people in the world. We improve their lives in a variety of ways. For example, by investing in agricultural productivity that for families, so that families do not go hungry, combating maternal and child mortality and deadly diseases like HIV, malaria, tuberculosis, and now COVID-19. We provide life-saving assistance in the wake of a disaster. We also promote democracy, human rights, and good governance around the world. And last but certainly not least, we foster private sector development and sustainable economic growth. Next slide, slide 5, please. Our global team works in more than 100 countries around the world with approximately 9,000 staff, and they're organized in 3 major categories. So approximately 1,800 for foreign service officers, 1,200 for civil service employees like myself, 6,000, approximately 6,000 for foreign service nationals. Now, quickly, just to give you an idea how to separate those, civil service employees inherently perform governmental functions and act as the essential link between the agency's strategic interests the program content, and the approach selected to achieve the mission objectives. Foreign service officers who support the agency's mission apply their technical expertise in support of our programs. And these individuals typically achieve this while living and working overseas. Last but certainly not least, foreign nationals are hires and usually of the same nationality of the host country. Next slide, slide 6, please. Before I go any further, I want to pause to highlight several important terms commonly used at our agency. I recognize that it may be a bit frustrating learning each federal agency's idiomatic expressions or acronyms, so this test will serve as a glance at the acronyms we love to use. Don't worry, everyone gets an A. So just take a quick look. All right, I know some of you have the answers. Next slide, slide 7, please. I want to highlight a couple of acronyms that are important in the world of procurement, and you'll hear more about these terms on slide 7 during Krista Wise and Deetra Jackson's presentation. For example, CDCS, if you're interested in supporting our overseas activities in a specific country, you should become familiar with the country development cooperation strategy. This is an important document because it articulates how USAID will further the goal of ending the need for foreign assistance in a specific country or region. And this strategy is usually a 5-year plan. I also want to highlight broad agency announcements. This is a 4-stage process from expression of interest to an award. During the pre-stage planning portion, it usually includes creating a team within USAID that includes program staff, legal, procurement, and possibly other external donor and partners. And you'll hear us say that a lot, partners, because we do believe our relationship with contractors is truly a partnership. On to slide 8, please. Over the years, our partnership with the small business community has been strengthened through various collaborative activities you'll see here on slide 8. We are dedicated to tapping into the expertise and resources and innovations of a diverse array of organizations across the public, private, nonprofit sectors to find and implement groundbreaking solutions to development challenges. So that was slide 8, and we're going to go on to slide 9, please. Okay, there we go, slide 9. So let us begin with a quick overview of how we fund our work to address global development challenges. USAID is funded by the American people, as we've already mentioned. You may already know in the US government system, while the president proposes a budget, the Congress decides the final budget for the federal government. And USAID staff work with the Congress and executive office of the president to determine the agency's budget. So there isn't a group of AID folks in one room, using a dart trying to pinpoint, what are our priorities going to be. They can be very prescriptive. On to slide 10, please. So back to the phrase country development cooperation strategies. If you read it carefully, you will understand the budget priorities for the country or the region. You will also use this document to identify specific programs and activities. For example, the agency tool has a tool called the program cycle. That looks at how we link everything we do, from policies to strategic planning, to project design, to implementation, to monitoring and evaluation, to how we incorporate those same lessons back into our policies. Also, I want to highlight the automated directive system. This is very important. It's also, you'll hear this acronym a lot, is also referred to as the ADS. It's our operational policies and procedures to help us determine the appropriate funding opportunities. The majority of USAID funds are awarded competitively through contracts and cooperative grants, but we use this system in that decision-making process. On to slide 11, please. Between the two categories of assistance and acquisition, we are often asked, which category receives the most funding? So here's a snapshot of how our funds were awarded in 2020. So obviously we can't, share 2021 because we're currently in the fiscal year. But as you can see here, this is pretty on point. There are several ways to which you can identify funding opportunities, and you'll hear more about that during Deetra Jackson's presentation. On to slide 12, please. So you might ask, how does the OSDBU and the Small Business Program fit into the acquisition and assistance process? Well, our functional activities are similar to the Department of Navy's Office of Small Business Programs. We implement the functions and duties of the Small Business Act. We work closely with contracting officials to review procurements over $250,000 to identify contracting or subcontracting opportunities for small businesses. And I just want to make sure everyone understands, grants or assistance is not within the purview of the OSDBU. Please keep that in mind. We are strictly contracts. We host outreach activities to educate small businesses about USAID contract needs, and we train USAID staff on the applicability of the small business program, policy and procedure, and we manage small business data to create transparency and accountability to enhance the exchange of information between OSDBU program offices and acquisition. So when I say acquisition staff, I'm referring to contracting officers, contract specialists, and contracting officer representatives. On to slide 13, please. The U.S. Small Business Administration utilizes an annual procurement scorecard to assess how well federal agencies perform their functional activities, as well as reach their respective small business goal. Our fiscal 2021 fiscal year goals are 12.51%. I don't know why that 1% is there, that 0.01% is there, but we could probably round it up and meet it by 15%. And its subcontract goal is 16%. Deetra Jackson will provide information about the difference between contracts and subcontracts and the role of a prime contractor versus a subcontractor later on in her presentation. Slide 14, please. As a small business program manager, I meet with agency leadership to negotiate and establish small business goals for each bureau, independent office, and mission annually. An individual small business goal ensures that each office contributes to the agency's overall small business accomplishments. This slide illustrates our small business goals versus accomplishments for the past 5 or 6 years. Prior to implementing our small business program about 8 years ago, we received an F on our procurement scorecard. Imagine how you would feel if your kid brought home an F on their report card. Well, that's how our leadership felt, and we got working on that. And since then, our internal small business goaling process has been instrumental in creating a sustainable upward trajectory in our small business dollar obligations. On to slide 15, please. Now, I won't go into great detail with this, but this chart just illustrates, and I should point out this again is for 2020. 2018-2020. This illustrates the small business accomplishments within the regions that we work. On to the next slide, please, 16. And this slide illustrates the Washington bureaus and independent offices' small business accomplishments. If you visit our website, you may view the chart which illustrates the overseas missions. That's just too much information to try to share with you today. So I definitely welcome you to visit our website. On to slide 17, please. So that really concludes. I just want to point out, I think my deputy director may have mentioned it, but if she didn't, I want to make sure that you are aware that our premier small business conference is scheduled for May 6, 2021. Definitely mark your calendar and check the sam.gov, because we're going to have you register through that. And as you can see, these are a list of other activities that the agency hosts to partner with current and potential partners within our agency. So with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'd like to pass the baton to Deidre Jackson. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon. My name is Deidre Jackson, and I'm a Senior Contracting and Agreements Officer at USAID. I've been with the agency for approximately 12 years. And as a matter of fact, one of my early bosses was Jamila Payton at the time when she first came to the agency. So it's so nice to see an old boss become a new friend. So it's a great opportunity. So one of my roles in this particular presentation is to kind of give a high view overview of what the Office of Acquisition and Assistance really is. And so to kind of give you some resources, tell you a little bit about the differences between contracting or acquisitions and assistance and grants, and the roles and responsibilities of what my office does. And then at the end, we also talk about any particular questions that you may have. So next slide, please. Okay, so this particular slide gives three really important bits of information I think is important for everyone to jot down. That there are three areas in which we will post all information about our pending procurements or even our active procurements. And one of them is the business forecast. And that is a document that is found on the USAID website. And it tells you what pending procurements that are coming up or the stages of a particular kind of procurement that we have going. So it's very important that if you're also new to working with the federal government or in particular USAID, that you familiarize yourself with the business forecasts. The second one is what we call Beta SAM. It used to be formerly called WWW FBO, and that is where we used to the FBO is used to where we post our contract or acquisition information. So now that's been incorporated into the Beta SAM page. So if we're going to be listing any kind of acquisitional kind of action or procurement, it's going to be listed on beta.sam. And then the third area is where we're going to post any information that's regarding any assistance award that we may have, whether it be a cooperative agreement or a grant. And that's going to be posted on grants.gov. So those are the three most important sites I would have you become familiar with. And you may hear it throughout this presentation because those are really important for especially people who are new to the government. Where do you find our information about our procurement? So thank you. Next slide. So here's the question. What is the definition of acquisitions and assistance? So I'm going to give analogies because I'm a visual person. I think it helps always make complicated things really simple. So when we're talking about assistance, we're talking about contracts. And when we're talking about contracts, I liken it to if I were to hire a contractor for my house. He doesn't tell me what my idea should be, but I've hired him to help me fulfill what that idea and that vision would be. And that is also what a contractor is for USAID. USAID, a particular department or bureau, has defined what their particular needs are, and we're hiring someone to fulfill that need on our behalf. And so in that particular kind of environment, there's significant oversight in the management of that award or that contract, in the implementation of it, because you're the contractor of your house. He doesn't tell you where the bathroom should be. He doesn't tell you what the color of the painting is. That is our job to define that for the contractor, and we're looking for them to help fulfill our particular need. Okay, next slide, please. Assistance. Assistance can have two definitions. One of them will be cooperative agreement. And I love language because language tells us something, right? What does the cooperative agreement mean? The words say cooperative agreement. That's a situation in which the USAID or the government has a need, but we want to partner with people in such a way that they're fulfilling our need, but we're using their program and their design. So you can see how that's slightly different than a contract, where we're giving specific direction for a contract. In assistance, we're also doing that, but we're also fulfilling that's a different word, that we're utilizing their methodology for how they've done it. So they have a way in which they like to do certain things in a program. And so we're working in deep collaboration with an organization when we're dealing with a cooperative agreement. And then we do have substantial involvement on that, but it's a different kind of substantial involvement than when it is with a contractor. So then third, next slide, please. The third is a grant. So the first time I ever heard the word grant was way before I worked for USAID, is when I went to the university. And a grant was an opportunity in which someone had funded me for a particular scholarship or whatever that thing may be. And then in that case, there was very little substantial involvement. So that is where USAID and or the government really wants to support a project, but we don't want to control it. We want to really support whether it's development, whether it be research or whatever that thing may be. And we have little substantial involvement in that process. So we have 3 different degrees of in which our involvement would be in the procurement process. So hopefully that will help you understand the 3 different kinds of mechanisms that USAID manages under its acquisition assistance program. Next slide, please. So here's where I come in. So here's the thing. We have a partnership. When I say we have the agreement officer, and the contracting officer. And at USAID, we may be one of the few agencies in which an agreement officer is also in the role of a contracting officer. So what that means is if I'm working in something that is an acquisition, then my role is that of a contracting officer. If I'm working on a project that's in the role of an assistance activity, I'm working in the role of an agreement officer. So that's where that terminology comes from. And then we also work with our partners who are technical teams. We call them the AOR, which is the Agreement Officer Representative, or the Contracting Officer Representative. So this is a partnership because we in the OAA office and as an agreement officer or contracting officer, I don't define what the scope of work is. Our partners in the technical teams, they define what the needs of the agencies are. They define the scope of work, but I must collaborate with them in making sure that when we put out solicitations that they're clear, that the evaluation process is clear and articulate. So the first part of the idea is like, what's the project that we want to have happen? And that's where our technical team comes on board. Then once we're brought on board as the agreement officer, we help manage that procurement process. We get the documentation together, we make sure it has all the policies and rules and regulation, and we manage the solicitation process. So there's a partnership that goes into that. And once a recipient has been identified or a contract has been identified, then we go in what we call post-award activities. And in that space there, the AOR or the COR may be managing the day-to-day activity of that award. So they may be your primary contact, but there are certain limitations to their responsibilities. And when they need to get approval to change something, a modification, so you'll hear that terminology quite often, a modification is a change to the original language or the roles or the activities within an agreement, they must then kind of reconnect with us in the as the agreement officer to have a conversation. Can this be done? Is it still within the scope of the original award? What's the impact of these changes? So there's a constant collaboration between the 2 teams, the technical team and the acquisition team. So next slide, please. So here's another really important series of resources I think is so important to understand. There are different resources and different policies that I must consider when issuing an award or making any kind of consideration that impacts an award. So as I said before, what's unusual about USAID is that the agreement officer and the contracting officer are typically the same person. In some agencies, they have different teams. You will have an acquisition team and you will have a contracting team, but that's not the case at USAID. So in my mind, the first thing I'm always asking is when someone asks me a question about something, I go, are we talking assistance or acquisitions? Because I need to know what series of resources that I need to look at in order to give an appropriate response. So in this case, when we're looking at acquisitions, there probably are 3 really, really important things that anyone working with the agency needs to be familiar with. One is the FAR. It is just the Bible for overall federal government about rules, regulations, and policies about contracts for the federal government. And so therefore, obviously, it's one of the most important tools that we also have access to. The second document is the ADAR. The ADAR is the USAID's supplemental version of the FAR. So you have the FAR, and then you have certain things that are unique and specific to USAID. And so that's another resource that I always have to look at if I'm looking at a contract and looking at various considerations of we're issuing a contract or the management post-award. Next slide, please. And then the third one, and I think my colleague had mentioned the ADS. Boy, the ADS is a document that in my office well worn, because we're in it all the time. And so there's a particular section of the ADS that will support all of our contractual needs, and that's ADS 302. So if you're talking about acquisition, you want to familiarize yourself with the FAR, the ADAR, and ADS 302. Those are the three most important pieces that I would want anyone who's new to the agency to become familiar with if you're talking about acquisitions. Can we go to the next slide, please? Now, again, as I said, I have to split my brain. Are we talking acquisitions or assistance? So now when I go to the assistance part of my brain, there are other resources that I need to look at for policies. And so one of them would be the 2 CFR 200. And that gives us all of our cost accounting and auditing information about certain kinds of assistance awards. The other piece, or the next resource, would be the ADS 303. 303 is for assistance and contracts, or cooperative agreements and contracts. And as you know from the previous one, ADS 302 is for contracts. So you want to be familiar with that, because they are separate and they are different. The next slide, please. And the other one, boy, this is also really good. This is, I kind of like my job a little bit. So the next one is the AAPD, and these are policies that come out, and they also often will come out before the larger ADS or FAR can be addressed or adjusted. And so these are policies that come out and that I need to be familiar with on a time-sensitive basis, because they may impact immediately what we're doing, or have an impact on any new awards that we may be issuing in the future. So this is a supplemental thing, but it's more real time, that it may not be fully incorporated in the FAR until much later, or fully incorporated into ADS much later. But these are documents and policies that I must be familiar with. So I would recommend that you also become familiar with these policies as well. Next slide, please. Okay, so thank you so much for your time and attention on this, and hopefully we'll have opportunity to discuss any more acquisitions assistance questions at the end of this presentation. Thank you.
Okay, it seems like we'll now turn it over to Ms. Krista Wise, who's our agency ombudsman and lead partner engagement representative for USAID.
Thank you so much, Jamila. And I have some slides. I think, Destiny, if you can bring those up, I'll go ahead and get started while you're doing that. Good afternoon to my esteemed counterparts at the Department of Navy, to my colleagues at USAID, and to you, our industry partners. Thank you, there's the slide. I'm happy to be here today to share with you a little bit about my role and to provide an overview of my function. So my USAID colleagues who are experts in their field have already provided information related to small businesses, as well as an overview of the procurement process at the agency. So I'm going to speak at a 30,000-foot level. And so I'm going to share insights into how I may be of service to you as you seek opportunities at USAID. Can we go on to the next slide, please? Thank you. So as reflected on this slide, as the ombudsman, my job is to ensure equitable treatment of all parties participating in any phase of the procurement process. I draw your attention to the highlighted words on this slide. I work to ensure that all parties, not large businesses or small businesses or those familiar with or new to aid, but all parties are treated fairly. To submit an inquiry or to engage my office, your question does not need to be specific to an active award or related to any award at all. In fact, many of the inquiries that I receive are not related to an award and are submitted to merely seek information, sometimes general procurement information. I also want to stress that inquiries are not limited to a specific procurement phase. I often engage partners at various phases to include pre, post, and the award phase. Essentially, it's important to note that any partner or individual who has a question, so long as it is procurement related, regardless of the phase, you should absolutely know that I'm a resource for you. Next slide, please. As the Acquisition and Assistance Ombudsman, and I know Teneshia talked about the acronyms, you'll see up there it says A&A Ombudsman, and so that is my way of referring to acquisition and assistance, but it's too long to say over and over. So you'll hear me say A&A or you'll see it written that way, and that's exactly what I mean. So my role as the A&A Ombudsman is to remain neutral and serve as an independent intermediary. Although I report to the Director of the Office of Acquisition and Assistance, my office is completely independent. We are not awarding officials, and we have no direct involvement in the issuance of any awards. The team is responsible for maintaining anonymity of sources and confidentiality of matters. And while we report trends, we never disclose any identifying information to leadership. We also maintain confidentiality while working to resolve issues unless you, as the requester, would agree to waive it. We pride ourselves on building the trust of our stakeholders, and we will never breach our confidentiality. We recognize how concerning confidentiality is to our stakeholders, and we take this charge very seriously. For this reason, we ask that if you do engage us, that you only email us. That way we can ensure that your information remains safe with us. I now draw your attention to the middle of this slide. It's important to note that when you engage any member of my team, this process is separate and apart from the official protest process. We're not initializing any legal action. We're utilizing an administrative review in an attempt to bring about resolution. The last point on this slide is probably, at least in my opinion, the most important, because we cannot stress enough, there are no insignificant questions or comments. Doesn't matter if you're an existing partner who's done work with AID for decades, or if you're just starting out and have never had an award with us. Every question that you submit to us, we track it and we utilize it and we respond to them accordingly. As a senior advisor to the Director of the Office of Acquisition and Assistance, we play a substantive role in A&A reform, training, outreach, customer access, and customer service. What does this mean? So you've heard Deidre mention ADS. So those are official chapters that reflect policy, internal policy for the agency. Well, procurement executive bulletins are guidelines that the agency should adhere to. A lot of the concerns and the questions and the inquiries that we receive from partners help to formulate PEBs, procurement executive bulletins. So when I say there are no insignificant questions, your questions allow us to identify gaps and figure out how we can resolve them. Your questions also help us to revise processes and procedures, develop templates, and even identify that we needed customer service goals. We also worked with our colleagues in the Office of Professional Development and Training to develop specific training for our A&A colleagues. While this list is not inclusive, it's important to state because it illustrates the changes that we were able to effect, and none of this could have been possible without the inquiries of our partners. Next slide, please. So again, it's important to note for the record that my office utilizes an informal administrative review process. Engaging any member of my team does not initiate a formal process, such as a protest filing. The ombudsman function was put in place as the initial point of contact to receive and respond to concerns and attempt to resolve those issues at the lowest possible level, thereby reducing financial and administrative burdens, not just for the agency, but for yourselves as well. The process that we follow varies, but we may utilize any of the reference methods to develop a recommendation. Next slide, please. So as you can see on this slide, my function is not without limitation. As the ANA Ombudsman, I cannot compel or direct the agency or any awarding official to take a particular action. But remember, we utilize an informal process. We do not perform investigations or receive formal notice. But this does not mean that we serve as figureheads. Nothing that we do is in a vacuum, and so every recommendation that we issue holds weight, particularly with our director of the office, as well as other senior leaders within the agency. Next slide, please. If you ever request assistance of myself or any member of my team, here's what you can do in advance to help prepare. I'm sorry. These are some of the traditional questions that partners have presented to us that identify, what the concerns are. We would want to know who are the relevant parties. Have you spoken to, so this would be, have you spoken to the AO or CO, the agreement officer or the contracting officer? That's if you have an active award with the agency. That helps us identify the angle with which we would bring your concern. And also, confidentiality is important, again, because if you don't want to waive confidentiality, we certainly won't breach that trust. Also, it helps us to understand, to know what are your time constraints. If there's an active solicitation that you have a question about, we would want to prioritize that. And then we're asking overall what you're seeking of us so that we can better understand if we have jurisdiction over your issue. If you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we're often asked, what types of inquiries do partners submit? Please note, you are not limited to the types of inquiry that may be submitted. Again, so long as your concern is procurement related, we will be happy to receive your concern and address it. And if we're not the appropriate party, we'll point you in the right direction. So I suggest that if you have a moment, you take a second to look at this slide, as it identifies the various reasons why one may want to bring an inquiry forward. But note, this list is not all inclusive. Next slide, please. And what I'd hope to convey today is that I am here to assist and to support you in any way that I certainly can. We are a team. We are a USAID team, we are a Navy team, and with you, our industry partners, we are one team. You communicate your concerns to me, and I will do my best to not only acknowledge them, but to effect change as I work to bring about resolution. I encourage your inquiries as I continue to enact reform to bring about necessary change within the Office of Acquisition and Assistance, and I didn't use the acronym that time. As this concludes the presentation portion of my discussion, I invite you to contact me anytime at ombudsman@usa.gov, and I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, ladies. That was a dynamic presentation. We do have a few questions that have come in. How can a small business communicate to a program manager to see if our products meet with the requirements holders' needs? So, for example, in the Department of Navy, we've designated our deputy program managers as small business advocates, and we utilize our small business professionals across the department as that entry point for industry to be able to get with that requirements holder to maybe do a capabilities brief. What are your recommendations for contractors that are looking to meet with your requirements holders at USAID?
Teneshia, if you're talking, you are on mute. Yeah, I can start until she can get the mute. At USAID, and I do believe we did provide a general mailbox. And when you go to our website, we do have portfolio managers. As mentioned at the top of our presentation, we're broken out by bureaus and independent offices. And those bureaus and independent offices also includes outreach to our USAID missions overseas. We mentioned we're in 100 countries. And in some cases, so within our office, we're not a very large office. We're 11 numbers strong. Within that, we do have dedicated support that can point you in that direction. I started that. Teneshia, your sound is up if you want to.
Yeah, no, I think you touched on it correctly, accurately. In addition, as Jamila alluded to, we assign a representative within our office to support every single component within the agency. We also have what's called a small business market analysis research tool, SBMART. I would encourage you to visit our website, and it's very, very simple. If you just type in the acronym SBMART, it'll take you to our website. You can upload or insert your firm's capabilities, and that information is utilized by our contracting officials worldwide to identify capable sources. And the beauty of this system is you don't have to use your standard CAPE statement. It's your opportunity to tweak your capability statement, to insert verbiage that's used within our agency. And it also provides our contracting officers with the feeling, I guess that's what I'm looking for, that you understand who we are and what we do if you incorporate regularly used acronyms and verbiage into your capability statement that's consistent with USAID. Thank you.
So while we're talking about presenting a capability statement, does USAID have a process to evaluate unsolicited proposals? How would a vendor go about providing an unsolicited proposal to your contracting shop?
Who would like to field that, Deetra or Jamila?
I'm going to also perhaps need to provide other information at a later date. But yes, for unsolicited proposals, there is a way for you to submit that. I just don't have that address in front of me, and I apologize for not knowing that off the top of my head. But my understanding is that you submit that information to a particular mailbox, and then that mailbox will then farm that out to the appropriate team or organization or bureau that needs to look at that. And then that team will then look at it from an internal perspective. The technical team will look at that, and then they will reach out to you to say, oh yes, this is very interesting. We're interested in doing that. Or unfortunately, that's not within the agency's focus or what have you. But I do believe if you look on our website, there is a mailbox for unsolicited proposals.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
And yeah, to further expand on that, there is a formal process, and we've introduced you to a lot of acronyms in terms of art. Our automated directive system, which we call the ADS, which is USAID's policy and governance on how we do just about all things. It serves as a great standard operating procedures for partners or prospective contractors like yourselves. So please, I believe it's in ADS 200, where it maps out the unsolicited proposal process. But I encourage you to go to our website on how to do business with USAID. There you can navigate all things. We get an A+ as an agency for our partner engagement.
Yes, we do.
Great. So this next question is about PPE coming, with COVID. The Department of Defense uses the Defense Logistics Agency, FedMall, to purchase their PPE. What is USAID if someone had face masks, gloves, thermometers, everything of the such? How would they go about selling that to USAID?
Okay, I will take that since I served as the POC for the COVID task force for a period. We do, and like Dietrich Jackson, I'll also have to provide additional information after this. There was a office that we forwarded all of those inquiries to for PPE. So I apologize, I don't have that information with me, but we can certainly provide it after this activity. Thank you.
And what I would offer to that vendor, if you have something specific, perhaps they can email it to that mailbox that we have posted in our chat feature.
Certainly.
So let's talk about the goals, ladies. So the Department of the, oh God, the Department of the Navy, I like to tout that we have successfully over the last 3 years exceeded all of our small business goals, as well as those socioeconomic goals. This firm is a small service disabled veteran-owned small business, and they're looking to do business with USAID. What advice do you have for them?
Well, I'd like to go first, please, Jamila. We welcome working with all small business representatives, especially veteran and service disabled veteran firms. As a matter of fact, we held a outreach activity to connect and expand our cadre of service disabled veteran-owned businesses. I think it was in November of 2020, and we have another one scheduled coming up. I believe the information is on our website. If it isn't updated, by all means, please reach out to us. You can reach out to us at OSDBU1@USAID. We do have a member on our team, Dr. Harry Parker, who serves as the point of contact for all veteran and service disabled veteran owned businesses. And he is actually the person who has been organizing these very successful outreach activities to connect with that community for the last few years. Jamila, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah, and just as a global response, we focus our outreach activities. Obviously, we look at the big picture, so for all small business, but we do have very focused activities by category. Ms. Alston is our representative for women-owned small businesses. As she mentioned, Dr. Parker represents our veteran small businesses. So by all means, and within that focus, we do have outreach activities, and we also partner with associations. So to the extent that we can, we really try to cast that broad net to bring into the fold as many small businesses as possible to the USAID contracting arena. Thank you, Teneshia.
Can you share Dr. Parker's contact information, or should the vendor reach out to that OSBP? I'm sorry, can you get that email address again?
I believe his, first let me say, our entire team's contact information is posted on our website, but to save you a click, Dr. Parker's website, email address is hparker@usaid.gov. So again, if you visit USAID's website, just Google OSDBU staff, it'll bring up our entire team, as well as their contact information. Thank you.
And just to add to that, all of the Navy's contact information is on the website as well, if anyone's interested. Okay, so the next question, does every federal agency have an ombudsman that has similar functions and responsibilities? And my answer to that is yes. That person resides in our office for the Department of the Navy. If there is an ombudsman request, you submit that through SBA, and it comes down to our agency. If there are specific areas that you're concerned about, you can reach out to the Navy's Small Business Programs Office. And I believe Ms. White has posted the email in the chat feature, or you can go through the formal process. We have a link to SBA's website on our website as well. But I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, ladies.
I do, thank you. I think the FAR requires that agencies have a task order ombudsman. And so most federal agencies should per FAR 52. However, the roles of the ombudsman in different agencies will vary. So My role, for example, is expanded. So I'm not a task order ombudsman, I'm the procurement ombudsman. And I have jurisdiction over all procurements in the office. And so that includes acquisitions, to Deidre's point, contracts and grants, as well as personal services contractors. So I think, yes, the short answer is federal agencies should have at least a task order ombudsman, but the jurisdiction of that role will vary across different agencies.
Great. Thank you, ma'am, for clarifying.
Sure.
So execution. What are the primary NAICS categories that USAID typically awards?
Oh, gosh.
I'll let you research that one, and then we'll go off to the next one while you're looking. So to do business in Department of Defense, you have to be cybersecurity maturity model certified. Are there certifications that a company must have in order to do business with USAID? Any cybersecurity requirements that you're aware of?
Well, my first thought is if it's pertaining to a specific requirement, the assumption here, it would be based upon the needs of that particular requirement. I'll be honest with you, that is not, my area of expertise, but we do have a member of our team who works closely with the Chief Information Officer and our security office, and we can connect whoever presented that question with that individual, and he or she could provide greater detail, or at least give you an idea of what is typically expected in terms of certifications when working with our agency.
And if I can add, Teneshia, that's an excellent response. And just to elaborate, as you can see, we're a small agency, but with a very huge mandate.
Yeah.
We're literally in 100 countries. And so with that, we're really going to draw your attention to the individual business opportunities. As Deirdre, Ms. Jackson said, we really put a lot into our planning and programming. I mean, great thought, like you won't believe. And so within that, each opportunity is just going to come with this very unique requirement, particularly when you're talking about, yes, we do have a CIO, and yes, we have health programs and democracy programs. And we do, I know Ms. Alston is looking up the NAICS code, but in Washington, we do purchase a lot of professional services. I know that is the bulk of what we do. I just don't have the code in my head.
Yeah,
but that is just such a big part of what we spend in Washington. And oftentimes, sometimes in the field, we call it overseas missions field work. So that's just my one advice. And I posted in the chat, Destiny, forgive me, I know we're supposed to do Q&A, but I did post in the chat the link to our office with our individual portfolio managers. My contact information is there, Ms. Alston, and it'll tell you exactly if you're interested in CIO, who to contact. If you're interested in work overseas, maybe in Latin America and the Caribbean, who to contact, that sort of thing.
I also want to kind of go back to one thing. I did look very, very quickly at NextCode. One of the primary ones that we looked at is 541611, and that's management and general management consulting services. A lot of that is our administrative staff and so forth. But then there are two other things I thought about, and thank you for mentioning, Jamila, that each procurement is unique and special in its own way. But one of the things you must be mindful of is that we need to have security clearances. And so there may be a time in a situation that you need to have a particular security clearance. That will be identified in the procurement, in the business plan, in the solicitation, and it will tell you that. And so you might want to become familiar with facility clearances. That's allowing you to be in our buildings because we are under, whether it be secret or top secret, what have you, especially in the field, that's also going to be a big issue there. And the other thing that you absolutely must be registered on is sam.gov, because that allows you to receive U.S. funding. If you're not registered on sam.gov, we cannot issue an award to you. So I repeat that you want to be registered within sam.gov. You want to be familiar with the facility clearance process, because those are two things that if we're going to issue an award, those two things that require facility clearance, you must have that, and SAM on all procurements, not just ones with or without facility clearance. You must have it on all procurements.
Great. Well, thank you, ladies. And that's all that we have time for today. If I see we still have some questions in the Q&A feature. If you have specific questions that you'd like to reach out to this team here, their information is posted in the slides that will be posted on our website. So thank you for joining us today. I hope you will be able to join us next week when we will be featuring the Office of Naval Research and talking about small business data rights. So thank you all. Hope you stay safe and stay healthy. Until next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.